Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Stay tuned for tonight's adventure with the Fat Man.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever time of day it is, I hope it's good to be where you are, because I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and we're going mudletting with Static. Yeah! Okay. All right, so this one begins over Memorial Day, when Static put out this video here, a Memorial Day message to alt history creators. All right, so that made me stand up and take notice, right? And in it, he issues a challenge to some of the bigger channels out there that have promoted the idea that the Civil War was fake. And I know he was fishing for the big kahuna, but I figured John Levi or any of the other big mud skippers out there, they weren't likely to answer his call, right? Those guys aren't interested in being challenged, right? Or challenging themselves all that much the way I see it. But I saw an opportunity, right? I actually like being challenged and challenging myself. So I wrote to Static and I accepted his call for a debate, right? And even though the focus of my show hasn't been about the Civil War specifically, I certainly believe it's very possible that the Civil War may have been staged, right? And to his credit, Static was very gracious, and over the course of a couple of emails, I suggested a mudletting style conversation piece, and so on Sunday night, we did just that, right? The conditions weren't ideal, right? It was late and service was lousy, my microphone unforgiving, right? But I did record it, right? And I did my best in post to make it audible. And there's no fixing my butchery of the English language. Sometimes I even amaze myself, right? So just sit back and relax, or, do whatever you want. You can make some eggs, whatever it is you're doing. I hope that you enjoy this conversation that I had with Jared Static in the attic, right? And we had a blast, right? And so after settling in, this picks up, we were talking a little bit about the Bloomberg Tartaria Q article. And so here we go. Have fun, guys.
I jumped in on the subject like a couple of months after Levi did, and then all of a sudden, him and Flat Earth British, it was just all Tartaria. And I just thought, what's going on here? This is just, I don't think John Levi's a shill by definition.
No.
But I think he said that, he was an inspiring filmmaker, The hardest thing for a filmmaker is to come up with subject matter.
Oh, yeah.
So he found his subject matter, and hey, when you're getting, some of his videos are getting 100,000 views, then if people are going to just eat it up and not question any of it, then of course, you tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. So now it's a theory that has no actual sound basis that everybody just goes with.
Well, right, and that's kind of what they talk about in that Bloomberg article. They talk about how, it's some psychologist who specializes in conspiracy theories, right? And he said that, it had water cooler potential, right? Because you could kind of pick and choose what you wanted about Tartaria and make it fit kind of anything you want, And I kind of agree with that. There's no one is trying to string together like a linear narrative for this thing, and it's been kind of years now.
No, and that's, that was the whole point of my videos. It's been years, and you guys don't have a basic timeline or nothing. It's just video after video of black and white photos.
Yep.
And it's just building after building after building. So it's more money for them and asking more questions.
Yeah, well, I mean...
And unfortunately, that's all I see out of it. I mean, I just got done watching, I don't know if you know Karimo.
No.
He's a black guy that does videos, and dude, he does excellent, research and everything. That's probably politically incorrect to say, but...
You're good.
African American isn't correct either.
No, that's...
According to what I studied.
I'll tell you what, I had an amazing experience. Like 2 weeks back, I had a brother of mine come in from out of town, and he visited, and he wanted to go to the Edgar Allan Poe house, which is, about a half mile or so from my house. And so we walked up there. And as we were walking up there, there were two black guys sitting on the stoop, and my brother, he does a channel where he does like travel videos and things, so he had like a GoPro attached to his shirt. And the two guys came right up to us and they're like, "Are you like First Amendment warriors?" Like, what's a First Amendment warrior? Right. And so no, we're just going up to see the Poe house. And and I'm filming, and I mentioned that I do a channel that's based on alternative history of Baltimore, and this guy looked me straight in the eye, and he's like, "We're not from Africa, are we?" And I was like, no, and so I said, are you familiar with like channels like Dane Calloway? He's like, I know Dane Calloway. He did that Harriet Tubman video, and I told him, I don't know if you know about UBTV, all these channels that have very in-depth research on how what we call African Americans today, on how that race was here, previous, and that perhaps they could actually be the real Native Americans, and
yes. And so that's why I was watching Karimo, because that's the subject matter that he's covering, and he does excellent research. He's pulling up books and all kinds of stuff, and he's saying, look, the copper color races aren't African. And I agree 100%. One of the things that I found this week was 1861 newspaper, and they're talking about the free colored sons of Louisiana not liking they use the word Negroes coming down from the north. So there were free dark-skinned people that were slave owners that were original Native Americans still in Louisiana at that time. I think there was African slavery going on, but that's not the whole extent of it, because there was also Irish slavery going on.
Oh, yeah, every race. I mean,
one of the estimates that I saw was like between a couple of, certain amount of years, it was like 10,000 African slaves were brought over, and like 7,000 Irish slaves were brought over.
Right, and then the history books, they want to, all these like the fact checkers of today will tell you that the Irish, they weren't slaves, they were indentured servants, and they try to create these distinctions when they're really tenuous at best, and so they kind of rewrite the history that way. And, and it's true, but like when this conversation we had walking up to the Poe house, I was like, well, look at your features and your skin color, and then look at a guy who comes from Africa who stands about 5'3" and is as dark as night, there's a genetic difference there. You're not the same race,
Right.
And, so there's so much that they've,
Well, and part of what they're covering up with all of that, why they shine such a spotlight on Southern slavery, was because the same thing was happening up in the North. If you study into the sweatshops of New York City of 1800s, they were importing Irish and whoever they could get to come in there, throwing them in slumlord housing, and then they were working 20-hour days in 110 degrees sweatshop,
Right.
So it was all slavery unless you were already rich. If you came to this country,
oh yeah, anyone who
there ain't no free rides. Somebody paid for your boat trip over here, so
right,
you owed for that,
And not to mention, there's very little difference between when you look into like I've read a lot of old Baltimore newspapers now, going back right to when the Baltimore Sun was first started being published in like 1836. And, to read through these papers, you actually see that there was a level of equality between what, we call, our history books call like the freed black slave, and, the common man who were just, there's a neighborhood where I work in a used bookstore, record store. It's in this neighborhood called Sharp Leadenhall. And, to read the history of Sharp Leadenhall, it was Irish and German and black community. All living together, and
Right.
So, there's evidence of that written into our history, and so when like the racial divide, it's kind of crazy. This conversation went in this weird racial way, but, that was
Things go.
yeah, right. That was inserted into our narrative really late, post 1900, with Woodrow Wilson and those, and the Democratic Party of the 1910s and teens. They were the ones who put the segregation laws. And I think that's when you start to see that really hardcore slavery narrative driving, because they were really pushing to create that racial divide. Right.
And it was the Democrats that were doing it, that were against the dart through people.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Here I am. Dude, I hate trying to be politically correct. A black guy calls himself a black man.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You don't have to worry about it. Hey, you can't offend. I mean, I cannot be offended. It is absolutely true.
Yeah. But it's unfortunately a product of our system at the moment.
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. Oh, well, and that's been deliberately fomented. Yeah.
That was a mixture of the native people that lived there and the French that came over, and it's not quite a pidgin language. It actually formed into its own language. So that Creoles, a lot of the words are French, some of them are English, but if they were to speak to somebody from France, they wouldn't understand each other.
Right.
Because it's so much of a different language, although it's heavily French-based. But then you also have pidgin languages, and that's what we see, like in modern-day Southern California with Mexicans coming up, and it's just enough communication back and forth to be able to work together.
Yeah.
Like me working on a job with a bunch of Mexicans.
Yeah.
You know, I know a little bit of Spanish, they know a little bit of English, but we can communicate, you know? But with the Creoles, you don't see that. You see that group of people forming their own language and then it carrying on to this very day. So I'm sure parts of the words that are in their language are Native American words that won't be found anywhere else.
Oh, yeah. And that's like the story of the Native American Indian as it's presented to us with the giant feathers and the teepees. And, you know, I'm having a harder and harder time with that story, you know, especially because
the thing is I think that was part of their culture, their way of life, but the teepee part of things, that came later after they got chased out of their cities,
right?
And, Trail of Tears, to the other side of the Mississippi, and then they unleashed the U.S. Army to go out and slaughter them and corral them into little reservations. And then they built the Eads Bridge in 1865, and that's when the first Europeans actually went west of the Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
There's this genocide and relocation of all of these people, and at the time, I'm sure that a lot of the Europeans coming over didn't know anything about it,
No.
And I'm sure history would like to just forget all of that.
Well, that's the thing, too. Well, because one of the things that I kind of look at, I look at things like most of our history has been staged for us. Like they've created a narrative, right? And they have the books, and now they need the stage, and they need to, what do you need to do to convince someone of your story, right? And you need to show them. You need to show them things, and that's why we have museums and things like that, right? Because once something is absolved into your brain visually, it sticks, Yeah. And so I've been looking at that type of thing in my show, and I found I did an episode about the very first expedition that came over for the London Company, right? The John Smith expedition. And they left a guy here. I can't remember his name now, but they left a guy here, and he's the one that did all the very first paintings and sketches of what the native, the Algonquin tribes look like and stuff like this, right? Powhatan or whatever his name was. Right? Yeah. There wasn't another drawing of a Native American person in any history book for 200 years.
What?
I mean, what you could do with that. I mean, you could really shape, you could you could round up a bunch of natives and you could actually make them believe that that's what their history was in 200 years, if you...
Well, and that's the deal is, I don't know if you've ever seen they called them the Indian schools, but they look like modern day prisons. We're talking barbed wire all the way around. And so for a couple generations, they had to go to the white man's school, learn what Society of Jesus taught them.
Oh, God, yeah.
And,
Well, that's another thing, too. I mean, they were on the first boat that landed here in Maryland. So,
they were on the first boat that landed in Peru, the first boat that landed in
Oh, yeah.
Mexico.
They were sending their propaganda straight from Rome,
Yeah, I was just reading about the Jesuit missionary. I don't know if you happened to catch my video about the Ica stones, but
I was watching that one this afternoon. Yeah.
a Jesuit missionary that was on board with Pizarro actually made a note of those stones all the way back in 1540. So
yeah, that's the thing. I have a hard time with sources. I mean, because I know the involvement of those Jesuits, right? And right. Since I don't trust them, how am I going to trust anything that they wrote? I mean, at what point? That's what makes it kind of sort of very difficult to navigate like these historical waters, because like when I'm not trusting any of the sources, what can you trust? You can only trust like your experience, right? And I have this idea that, and I'm sure it's not my idea, but it's something I work with, is that our history is really only sort of good as our living memory, as our oldest people, right? And so once you start to get back over 100 years or so, I mean, you really, just take our word for it. You have to take our word for it, right? There's a certain level of belief and trust in these systems. And so that's like, it's funny when I see, like I saw you did one, or maybe it wasn't a video, but you were asking someone, anybody, to show a map of like Tartaria in America.
Yeah, I made a post of that,
Yeah. And so for me, it's like, God, I don't know that I would trust any map that I ever saw. I mean, how do we know where?
Well, the thing is, though, is they're using certain points to make their case. Only if it doesn't jive with what they're saying, then it's false. So they're picking and choosing information.
Yeah. Of course.
I'm not down with that.
Yeah.
You can't take the parts that fit in your theory and leave the rest out, like the fact that there's thousands of photos of the World's Fairs being built. I've even got a video of them demoing and redoing the Palace of Arts in San Francisco,
Yeah.
So I doubt that that's video shopped in 1930,
I mean, the thing is, it may have been, because we don't know what technology exists in the private sector.
Sure.
I mean, we have no idea. I mean, there could be time travel could be happening. we would have no way to know it, And one thing that I found out about technology is, I've been doing, part of my thing is I look at like the indoctrination of science fiction into the general public and how they can ese that.
The pre-programming.
The writer of the manual that the CIA uses for psychological warfare was written by a man named Paul Linebarger. And he taught out of Hopkins here, and he died in Baltimore. And he was the godson of Sun Yat-sen, the first emperor of the Chinese Republic. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This story is really deep. And he was a writer as a pseudonym. He wrote short science fiction stories under the pseudonym Cordwainer Smith. Right. But he was the minister of psychological warfare for the CIA in the late 40s and 50s and into the early 60s. And then he retired and essentially wrote the manual and taught at the CIA it's taught for the CIA out of Johns Hopkins here. And this book is freely available online. I mean, you can just download it. It's called Psychological Warfare by Paul Linebarger. And, he has deep ties to what was happening in China back. Like his father was the banker for Sun Yat-sen, right? And his father thought that Paul Linebarger, this man who wrote the book on psychological warfare, could have been president of the United States, And wow. So there's some very interesting connections between that, the psychological war programs, his connections to China, China's connections to what's going on today with the pandemic and everything like that, So, I mean, there's a very, very interesting story that's not being told out there,
Yeah. Well, and another big part of the Civil War was that the English bankers didn't want a united America, so they were big instigators in making sure that a war actually happened.
That's I don't know much about what was happening in the European banking in the mid 1800s, because that's not where my focus has been. But my focus has been on how America has never been independent. We've always been, part of the British Empire. Like there was no war of independence as it's taught to us today,
Sure, I think we probably lost the War of Independence or the Revolutionary War, and they just told everybody that we won, so that.
Well, that's
create a stir.
Oh,
that's what I was going to mention earlier. We were talking about the perception of things.
Yeah.
And that's one of the principles of Marxism, is the perception of revolution in the streets as destabilization.
Yeah.
They don't say revolution in the streets. They say perception of revolution in the streets. So
you just have to make people think it's happening.
It's the exact same principle that they're using today with Black Lives Matter and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
The more they can make it look like the country's tearing itself apart, the more it helps them, because then everybody's going to say, oh, please help me, big government, you're our only savior, you know. Oh, yeah.
Oh, perception as reality is a big focus of the work that I do. I just, as a matter of fact, just did an episode about that, but involving, perceptions of sexual identity in America today, and how is it that, how is it we're losing our minds over this issue here, right? I mean, what?
Over pronouns.
Right, these pronouns and things like that. And, so as part of my show, I've been looking into this deep history of Edgar Allan Poe's family, tracing it back to the royal courts of the early Stuarts and the late Tudor dynasties, right? And they're connected to this guy named Mervyn Touchet, who was one of the highest profile victims of the Buggery Act of 1533, where he was essentially executed.
I watched your video on the Buggery Act.
Yeah, right? And so, I mean...
Yeah, this same dude that kept showing up in newspapers.
Right, yeah, year after year after year. I mean, they really created this narrative behind that. And so today, like in America, Gallup did a poll. Well, the first poll suggested that only 5% of the American population is homosexual,
Right.
5%. But the average American believes that 25% of the American population is gay.
Right.
And that is definitely done by design. That is,
It's because of the amount of, TV is the devil.
Oh, yeah.
But it's the amount of control that they have over things, and it's the fact that a lot of the people in power are homosexual themselves. So
yeah, I make a joke about that in my show, too.
they want it normalized for everybody else.
Yeah, oh, yeah. So that same technique holds true, I think, in just about any, or any minority concern you might want to think about, but in any other school of indoctrination, whether it's our history, our politics, our, if they can convince you that it's happening, then it's happening.
Sure. Vietnam.
Right.
Tonkin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Off to war. And then everybody goes there and they realize it's all about
and even I can't remember.
Desert Storm.
Right.
Weapons of mass destruction.
And
everybody goes there, they realize it's all BS. What's the next one going to be?
Right.
It's going to be more BS.
Oh, absolutely. Well, they're going to find something to get us involved somewhere soon enough. They're going to have to. They got to keep that, military-industrial complex rolling,
Right. Look at what's going on with Israel and Palestine right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're just pumping out propaganda like crazy, saying, Hamas wants to kill us. Hamas wants to kill us. And they're the ones shooting all the rockets that I see.
Right. That's...
I'm not saying it's a one-sided ordeal, but...
reporting
of it is definitely one-sided.
Oh, yeah. They need to build their support and,
Right, because it's against the Geneva Convention for them to just start killing citizens.
Who needs the Geneva Convention?
And so, they have to go for public appeal, justification.
Crazy. But yeah, they've definitely, they have us the way I look, my term is they have us clocked. We are 100% clocked as a society today, They have it down, and those that aren't clocked are so few that it doesn't matter,
Yeah, and it's just a daily bombardment of division by sex, by age, by race, by everything except for class.
Yeah.
That's the one thing you don't hear about. They just, and that's kind of weird because they're using all the Marxist tactics, and the Marxist idealism is that there's the oppressed and the oppressed.
Right. Yeah, there's two classes.
Away with that, and they just, now that we're basically all the oppressed, they just got to divide us and have us at each other's throat however they can,
Yeah.
They've done a very good job of shifting the attention away from the oppressors.
Oh, yeah. Misdirection is the name of the game,
just sad to see people fall for it so easily over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that makes me sad about, the Taria thing is I feel like people have just traded one lie for another lie and now accepted that as the truth.
Yeah,
that's ran with it,
Yeah, I mean, I was really confused when the Tartaria thing first came about because when I first came to it was through like Conspiracy R Us and the original Mudflood channel. I don't know if you remember him, because he pulled his channel, pretty, right when Tartaria was heating up. He pulled his channel altogether. When I first came to it, when I first started looking around Baltimore at what I was seeing is that all these, the architecture here has been. I'm not a Baltimore native. I moved here from Connecticut.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I moved here and I started looking around, I was like, "What is up with these buildings?" I mean, there was some of the doorways were just, blowing my mind. And, there was windows that were 3 feet below the sidewalk. It's like, how does that window doesn't make sense? It doesn't serve any purpose, or it doesn't serve the purpose it's designed for.
It does. I'm in construction and
no, this is, I'm talking about, I would love to take you for a walk. There are windows that are like 4 inches wide, right, that drop down 3 feet below the sidewalk.
Oh, I know the exact.
It's
you're talking about.
And then I have the same
building, and especially before electricity, I'd want that natural light coming into the basement. And I've honestly remodeled houses in San Francisco where I did similar windows where you're cutting out retaining walls, so that you can get some natural light down in, so that they can rent it out, as an in-law unit.
I have, my basement is one of these. This house was built, I think, in 1905. They said, right, and so my basement window doesn't come below the sidewalk, but I'll tell you, it's not the most effective thing for natural light. Maybe it's the way my house is facing, or I don't know.
It's better than pitch black.
Oh yeah, but again, even
if it opens, then that's a huge plus too, because then you can get some airflow.
Well, it does open now, but who knows what? It's a modern window now. I don't know what was there before.
Yeah.
But I went to I got challenged once, because I was making videos like documenting these windows, and so the guy was like, "You need to go to the library. These are coal chutes. Every window was a coal chute." I'm like, no, that's not true. And one of the points I wanted to make too is I have like churches with stained glass windows that go below the sidewalk. That's not by design. There was definitely a regrading effort here in the city. Because there are some big, like, picturesque windows that go down in the sidewalks. That's not right. So there was definitely a regrade effort here. There's evidence from it. I've talked to people digging up the streets. Hey, how far down have you ever found a road? I had one guy in front of Lexington Market, which is the oldest existing market in America. He said that he found a road, over 5 feet deep. There was another road, beneath where he was digging at 5 feet. So they definitely did some regrading, whether it was done by, the mud flood or whatever. And I also found evidence in Baltimore for floods that they've been hiding from us, and that this Baltimore basin area here was once quite a very active flood zone.
Oh, yeah. Without the flood control system that they have for the Mississippi Valley, nobody would be able to live there.
Yeah.
They've got 5 huge dams set up down the Missouri River to control the water flow coming off the Missouri into the Mississippi. Otherwise, they'd be wiping out Memphis and Louisiana and everybody downstream. So if one of those ever fails, it's going to get down to, I can't remember the name of the lock, but there's a lock in Louisiana that almost was blown out in a flood in the 70s. And they said if that thing ever goes, the Mississippi is going to jump course over to the Atchafalaya and take it all the way down to the ocean. So the Mississippi will no longer go through New Orleans.
Wow. That would be quite the redirect.
Yeah. Yeah, it would kill New Orleans.
Yeah.
Because, that's how the French managed to, that's why the French made the Louisiana Purchase and sold it to America. It's because they had control of the mouth of the Mississippi River, so they had control of that whole area.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought that I was going somewhere.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's good. It happens.
Yeah. It happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
You'll think of it in a minute. We'll circle back.
Yeah. Got to circle back.
Circle back, Jen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we were the stained glass window going down below.
Yeah, there was,
rereading.
right. There was something before that. Now that's I got sidetracked because I wanted to mention that. I mean, I do have
room 5 feet down. Or
right.
whatever.
That was it was. I don't. Yeah, we'll get to it. Let's. But,
yeah.
So yeah, this started out as a Civil War thing.
You never know where things are going to go.
No, you don't.
But that's the good thing about conversations, you know.
Oh yeah, no, that's.
Yeah, I've never tried sitting down and making a video with anybody else or anything like that. So that would definitely be a learning experience.
I'll tell you, when you mentioned that you went hiking earlier, it reminded me that I used to go hiking in Connecticut at Sleepy Giant or Sleeping Giant State Park, which is, how do you feel about that? The whole mud fossil kind of line of thinking.
I'm quite suspicious of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a rabbit hole with a little bit of truth. And the main reason I'm suspicious of it is the timing of it. Because it came out right about the same time that everybody was jumping on mud flood. And then all of a sudden, mud fossils is constantly in my news feed.
Yeah.
It was like it was being promoted. And, some things I can agree with, some things not. But also what had just came out at that time was the videos talking about the no trees on flat Earth.
Yes, and that's an idea that is really gaining a lot. It's always captivated me, but the research that I've been doing recently, it is really pulling me further in that direction with the big trees.
At this point, I almost think that all rocks that we see are petrified remains of something.
Yes. Yeah.
And gemstones come from living organisms.
Yep.
Just look at a petrified tree, and you can see the gem, the crystallization and the fossilization process. Hey, amber is fossilized tree sap. That's a semi-precious stone, I just found a new theory on coal deposits that I was about to do a video on, but I found a scientist that made a really straightforward, easy explanation of it. He's been studying a landslide that happened during the Mount St. Helens eruption, and a whole mountainside fell into a lake, and still to this day, 30 years later, half of the lake is filled with logs that are floating because wood will not rot in water. And I think that all the petrified trees came from logs that were submerged in water at one time. But what he explains is that all of these trees out in the lake grind against each other, and they grind all of the bark off, and that bark falls down as a fine sediment, and that's the peat, what they say are the peat bogs. That's what creates the peat bog. And then the trees, when they finally get waterlogged enough to sink, the root end will be heavier, and so it will stand upright, and it will fall down into that debris that has been rubbed off. And so this builds up, and then something happens, and then all of that winds up underground, and it turns into coal, and that's why you find all of the trees standing upright in coal veins.
That's
I
crazy.
don't know if I did a good job of explaining that, but I'm going to do a video on it.
Nice.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Like I said, amber is just fossilized tree sap. It seems like everything, stone and rock-wise, came from some living organism.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, because looking at it, and I know you've done this, and it's funny, you did a video recently that I watched, and at the end of it, I was like, curse you! Because I was like, because I'm stringing my story out, I'm digging deep into the details. Right? And you did did a summation of the last year of what I was looking at in like 3 minutes. I was like, damn it. But because I hadn't gotten that far yet, but looking into this giant tree theory, this, no tree on flat Earth or no forest in flat Earth or whatever that was. Right? Yeah. I was looking into the York family, right? And York actually means place of the yew tree, Y-E-W.
Yeah.
Which is, and that was what the Roman name for York was as well, which was like Eraticum or something like that. I don't have it in front of me. But when I was looking at, like, I've been doing this bit about tying what was happening with the plantation of Ulster in the Tudor and Stuart dynasties to the plantation of America, right, in this colonization effort. There's a lot of interesting tree sort of myths and parallels coming out of the Irish story that translate over here as well. And so I've been really interested in that recently. And so I was curious as to what you thought about that, as well as, like, we're talking about the mud fossil thing, because, like I said, I used to hike in this sleeping giant mountain in Connecticut, right? And when you approach this thing, and it always, as a little kid, I would see it, and it just looks like a man laying down, man. It is unbelievable. Yeah. Right? And as a kid, I was like, "Damn, someday that guy's gonna wake up." and so that idea has always captured me. And going back, I've been reading about this type of thing for a long time. I've been into it since I was a real little kid in the 70s. And I would get magazines like Paranoia magazine and Steam Shovel Press in the late 90s and stuff like that. But there was also, like, David Hatcher Childress, like, before he became super Ancient Alien guy. He had his own independent publishing house, and he published a magazine called World Explorer. And I used to subscribe to that magazine in the 90s. And there were articles about your Ica stones, and there were articles about, like, the mud fossil phenomena and things like that, like, going back that far back. So, I mean, these aren't, like, new things, Right. And so they've always held some sort of interest for me. It's kind of interesting to see the role that they're playing these days.
Well, okay, as far as mud fossils go, I am not against the idea that some of these things might be the bones of giants that we're looking at.
Yeah.
But the theory goes from one extreme to the other. It goes straight to everything is the bones of giants.
Right.
And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I'm seeing trees here, because I've seen all the tree stumps all over Arizona.
Yeah.
And then I've seen them online, and
I'll tell you what,
South America, all these places. And it's like, well, wait a minute. So if the people were giants, well, then wasn't everything else giant? You know? Because if a guy's 150 feet tall, he's going to have to eat a lot.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, that's the argument that I use against dinosaurs. And it's interesting that you had dinosaurs in this recent video you did today. Like, for me, like the brontosaurus, right? You think about a modern elephant. Like, an elephant needs to eat like 14 hours a day to survive, or something like that. 10, 12 hours. It's a huge part of their day they need to eat. But a brontosaurus, like 10 times the size of an elephant, it's got the smallest head in the world. There wouldn't be enough hours in the day for that thing to eat, to sustain itself.
Right.
It just doesn't, it just doesn't make sense that way.
Well,
but
I also do think that for things to be that big, that they were completely different, contain higher CO2.
Yeah.
Because now we're mainly, it's 70% inert gases, or probably more than that. 70% nitrogen, then a bunch of inert gases, and then like 2% oxygen and 0.0000015% carbon dioxide.
Yeah, right. I mean, one thing that always cracks me up too is like everybody's so high on oxygen. Oxygen, oxygen's not even the biggest part of the air we breathe. It's like, why aren't we saying, get that guy some nitrogen quick?
Right.
But we say oxygen, it's crazy the way, why aren't they hipping us to the fact that our air is mostly nitrogen?
Oh, and here's another weird thing, is if you take the component parts of H2O and you look at the weights of them, I need to do a video on this sometime, but if you look at the weight of 1 gallon of hydrogen and 2 gallons of oxygen, then the combined weight of all 3 gallons adds up to like 12 pounds. But 3 gallons of water at 8 pounds a gallon is 24 pounds.
Right.
So H2O doesn't add up to what we get with water.
That is crazy.
I kind of forgot about that one, but that's something I should do a video on.
Yeah, absolutely, you should. Yeah, I mean that's a crazy story. I hadn't never heard that before. Kind of like
do it for yourself,
right? Yeah. I'm just amazed by. I can't remember what channel I first heard it from. Maybe it was Wise Up. I can't remember. But the idea of the polar ice caps melting and things like this, and coastal flooding getting out of control, and but the simple sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Debunking of that would be, you fill a glass with ice. When the ice melts, what happens? The level stays the same. And it doesn't change.
Right.
It doesn't change. Because, I don't know how old you are, Jared. I'm 50. And so I remember being in high school in the, 86, 87, my science teacher was like, watch, the ocean levels are going to rise, and so in 20 years, the sea level is going to encroach 10 or 15 feet, I mean, it just
right.
hasn't happened, I mean, is that because, the environmental warriors have done their job so well that they curbed that type of thing? Or was it never going to happen,
So there's a channel called Tony Heller.
Okay.
And he is an official climate scientist.
Okay.
He just constantly debunks the mainstream narrative. And he shows that they've been doing climate alarmism for over 100 years, and it's the same story every time.
Oh my God, no. I did
back in the 1920s, the Glacier National Park, the glacier was melting, and they were saying, there's going to be no more glacier in 5 years.
Right.
Just like they were saying in 2014. And then it cooled off, and the glacier grew, and now it's starting to melt again. So we're just recycling the same from a century ago.
Right. When I did
pandemic, climate alarmism.
Well, I'll tell you what. That's kind of funny that you say that, because when I was looking into the Baltimore fire and reading Baltimore Suns from 1906, this might have been even for the Jubilee in 1904. I found an article about, sunstroke and extreme heat and things like this, but they were calling it other things. And it led to, I also found an article, they say that they were trying to buy the clouds. They were trying to create a municipality to buy the clouds and manipulate the weather. It was a crazy little article. I'll send you the link. I mean, really. So that would have been 1904 or 06 in Baltimore. And then the yellow fever, or what was it? No, the Spanish flu, right? That was 1912, right?
1919, 1920.
1919, 1920. So about 15 years later. But yeah, you're right. I mean, definitely climate alarmism. I mean, that far back, 1904. I've seen it, in the Baltimore Sun. So.
Yeah, no, definitely check out Tony Heller, because
I will.
I wish everybody in the world could see his videos, because, I mean, he just lays it out very flat, very simple.
Yeah.
And so I stumbled across an article a few weeks back, and it was a melting glacier, I believe in Italy, and they found a cache of World War I weapons and, all that kind of stuff. And the original article said that they had to excavate 60 metric tons of ice out of there to search the cave. So it melted just enough to see something was there, and then they had to dig the rest out, okay? And it turns out to be all this World War I memorabilia. They later went back and just erased the part about having to excavate all the ice out of it. But they're sitting there saying that, thanks to climate change, the glacier is sinking. They said the glacier has been retreating for 200 years. That's what they claim in this article. But they're finding relics of World War II under the ice, or World War I under the ice. So obviously it wasn't under ice in the 1920s.
Right, because that stuff got there.
Walk right up in there.
Right, yeah.
So they contradict themselves right there in their same article, and nobody cares or notices.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Yeah, because they're all too, for lack of a better euphemism, I guess, they're all too blind to see. They're all too. That's why I say they have us clocked, or they have the general public. Gen Pop. Gen Pop is clocked as far as our controllers are concerned. They.
Right.
And
turn turn on the TV and turn off the brain.
Right. How long have they been working on it? Oh, that's where I was going before. See, I knew we would circle back, right?
I did.
Right. Like the technology aspect of things, like when you mentioned, they couldn't have faked all these like dairy type photographs and things like this, and and I'm saying we don't know what technology was like in the public sector or for how long that could be. I work at this used bookstore, right? We got a stack of science fiction books by a guy who I'd never heard of, which was amazing to me because my father was an old school sci-fi guy. I thought I'd heard of just about everybody, but for some reason I never heard of this guy. And I can't remember his name now because I was just I was working. But I just Googled him quickly because the titles of his books were really intriguing. And I wish I could look him up right now. And so it turns out that he was published by a guy who owned and operated like the largest radio station network in New York, like right at the turn of the 1900s, and actually had a patent for the first television in the 1920s that broadcast sound and picture together. And like there's a picture of it, and it's like a guy with like tubes in his ears looking at like a very small projected picture. Very strange, but I mean, so it's just incredible.
Yeah, it's called the something scope. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just something like a fantastic image that they were using to sell the public on technology that perhaps they had already well perfected and had been using for who knows how long, and especially with the properties of glass as they're exposing them to us today with smart glass and things like that, and the power of crystals, and the information that crystals store, who knows? It's just impossible.
Like nanotech.
Yeah.
And what the hell are they spraying in our skies?
Right. Oh, who knows what's going on in the skies? Nanotech is a really interesting thing for me too, because I remember like being a kid and like watching like Cosmos and things like that with Carl Sagan, and they were doing nanotech, like they were building guitars, like functional guitars that were like the size of an ant head. It's like, why? Why are you? Even as a kid, I was like, what's the purpose of that?
Right.
I get maybe having to build small things like you want to do, like, of course, seeing like movies like Fantastic Voyage as a kid where they, inject a mini spaceship into a body to go do repair, okay, maybe I get that, but a guitar? Why are you building a functioning guitar?
But that's how science always works, is they have a benevolent reason to get the scientists involved, but then once they have the technology, then their nefarious ideas come out,
Absolutely, yeah.
Like Oppenheimer and building the bomb, he gets done with it and he says, I've become the destroyer of the world, he's kind of like, what the hell did I just do?
Yeah. And that guy over there helped me.
Power that they don't need.
And that's another thing too. What exactly is the atomic bomb? I mean, I don't necessarily buy the story that they presented out there for that either.
Yeah, I don't know. All I know is it's a big firecracker.
Yeah, I mean, it could level some trees.
Yeah.
But
their whole story of producing 60,000 of these, and they're claiming like 60,000 missile silos in America at the height of the Cold War.
Yeah.
Well, if you look into these missile silos, these are $100 million projects when they are being built.
Yeah.
They have to set up a whole army base to protect that project. Everybody around knows that project's going on. And then when you do the math and break it down by counties, it works out to like 2 or 3 silos per county. You mean to tell me they built a missile silo, 2 or 3 missile silos in every county in America and nobody knew about it?
Right, well, when I was a kid, we used to, play like Pee Wee soccer. It was at the Nike site. That's what we called it. So kids grew up playing soccer on Nike sites, at least in southern Connecticut, anyway.
Wow.
Yep. Build a nuclear missile silo and then turn it into recreational soccer field for children.
Right, and then what does that really tell you about the dangers of nuclear?
Right. Oh, yeah.
It's not dangerous. You've seen Galen Windsor, right?
Who is it?
Galen Windsor?
No.
Oh, he was one of the original nuclear scientists. He said that they used to go down to the storehouse in the basement, and they'd take about 5 pounds of uranium in one hand, 5 pounds of uranium in the other hand, and then they'd carry it up with their bare hands and start working with it.
I have heard this. I just didn't recognize the guy's name. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he did speaking tours, eating uranium on stage.
Uh-huh. I have heard of that guy.
Yeah, and he's like, I used to go swimming in the cooling pool.
Well,
there's absolutely nothing dangerous about it all, other than the bankers saying, no, it's dangerous, so we got to keep a lid on this. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's happened over there, but I mean, at least on the surface, to me, I don't hear much about like the Fukushima thing from, was it 10 years ago or whatever, with that massive.
Nothing's happening. Have you seen Wolves of Chernobyl?
Nope.
Dude, the wildlife is thriving there. There's 6-foot catfish in the rivers because nobody's there fishing. The wolves are like 1.5 times the size of the wolves.
They're Nordic now. Now they're these northern, wolves.
Yeah, and so all of the wildlife in there is flourishing in abundance because nobody told them that they're supposed to be sick from radiation.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Also with like the climate, I mean. What would happen if there was more carbon dioxide in the air? I mean, things would just get bigger, wouldn't they? The plant life would be bigger and, the animals would get bigger.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my video on them pumping carbon dioxide straight out of an industrial plant into the air of a field.
I did see that one.
They were getting like 300% yields.
Yeah.
It was like 3 times what normal yields were just because they called it fertilizing with carbonic acid. So there's a very good use for the carbon dioxide that comes out of all industry. You can use it to grow more food, but they don't.
Well, who knows? They may, and that's I get, something that might have to happen in another conversation, because I will say this, it is starting to get on the late side for me here at almost midnight.
I'm actually getting kind of cold. I'm standing outside.
But, I mean, like I said, this has been a lot of fun, man. I thank you so much, and just because we didn't really have like much of an intro, this kind of started because you had a Civil War challenge, and I was like, hey, man.
Right? Here was my experience. The very first video I made was just a video response because I realized a bunch of things. So I sent it to Flat Earth British, I sent it to John Levi, and I sent it to Max Egan. All 3 of them took the material in my video and left out all of the main points that I made about the power structure change of that time and everything. And like Flat Earth British turned it into electromagnetic weapon earthquakes and just absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, the whole fascist thing that he does was driving me crazy.
Nobody gave me a shout out, no nothing. And I'm like, oh, what's really going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the thing. You say too much, you share too much, and then, that's, it's one of the reasons I kind of keep my distance. I mean, I personally believe that, I think it's funny when I hear video, channel creators talk about being shadow banned, yet they have 100,000, 200,000, some even almost 1 million subs. Like, yeah, they don't know what shadow ban's all about, because I've been working hard at this for a few years now, and, it's really hard to find any growth, So I definitely feel...
I got 25,000 subs in 3 months, and they just turned off the faucet.
Wow.
And after that, you can go on Google and you can type in Static in the Attic, and it shows a video of a song that this crappy band had called Static in the Attic.
Yep.
That before I created my channel, they had about 5,000 views. Now they've got like 30,000 because of people searching for me.
Right. Now you're thinking that's your band, maybe.
That's all that comes up. So you can do this on Google and Start Page. I'm shadow banned on Start Page too.
I don't even know what Start Page is.
Static in the Attic on YouTube, Static in the Attic Mud Flood, and if you type in Mud Flood, it will take you to somebody else's channel that has some of my videos posted. But you can't find me through Google. You have to go to YouTube and physically type in Static in the Attic. That's the only way you're going to find me.
Wow.
And the thing is I've done this with all the other quote-unquote truthers, and all their stuff comes up just fine. But mine is shadow banned. What's going on here, man?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. Like I said, for me, I mean, I never even got out the gate. You know, I did a little bit because of Conspiracy Arts kind of gave me a boost at the beginning, but then he shared my work, and then he pulled the video that he shared my work in. And so I wasn't getting any traffic from him anymore. And then I just, you know, it's taken, you know, I like to joke that I have the most lateral growth rate in the history of YouTube. You know, I pick up 2, I drop 1. I gain 3, I drop 4. And I mean, that's kind of the way.
I know the feeling.
That's how I've gotten to where I've gotten today. But, you know,
Right.
but you know, for me, that makes me think I'm onto something.
I'll put you on my channel, and you'll probably get a couple thousand.
Oh, well, I'm not. Again, I didn't even do this for that. You know, I mean, for me, it's like I really enjoy the the tact you've been taking over the last couple months with your videos, and really, you know, kind of pushing those bigger channels who are putting some of these, you know, narratives out that really aren't pushing the story forward at all. You know, and you know, I think that's commendable that you were doing that. I mean, somebody should, you know. And
it honestly, it only hurts me. But
yeah, because, well, that's the thing. The audiences are so, yeah, I mean, I was going through the comment section of your comments, like, God, some of these people just don't get it, you know?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Well, today I had a good long hike, and I had the realization, I'm like, you know what? It only causes me trouble and pain to go into the comment section, so I need to just stay out of the comment section.
You know, my comment section just isn't that active, you know, so as much as I would like it to be, but for whatever reason, it's not. And I find that for me, I get comments, like I'll get a notification that I got a comment, and then I'll go look for that comment, and it's gone, you know. So I think a lot of people are getting...
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah, I think people who are trying to comment on my show...
I'm just spending all day erasing comments.
Yeah.
That's all I do in my life is erase people's comments.
Oh, I don't know that I've ever erased a comment. I don't think I have. I only got one troll one time, and I kind of, you know, handled him, and he never came back, and so I just left it. I don't even remember what video it would be that he did that anymore. But anyway, all right. So we're getting a little off topic here now. But anyway, I definitely, you know, thanks so much for agreeing to have this conversation with me, man. And
right on. Yeah, we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, it sounds good, man. Yeah, I had a great time. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, you have a great night, Jared.
All right, you too, bro.
All right, bye. All right, so there you have it. And I'd just like to thank Jared one more time, you know, for this experience. You know, it was really a whole lot of fun, and hopefully we can do it again, right? And so until the next one, guys, cheers.